SilverWolf Midstream and Niel Rootare.
Rootare, yes.
Oh my gosh, I got something right.
Perfect.
He's going to be speaking. So Niel's going to be running his slideshow from his laptop,
Yeah.
and he's going to be discussing and introducing himself. So Niel, why don't you kick it off?
Well, thank you, Marty. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I was invited in at the very short notice because we have a pipeline project, energy infrastructure, that is kind of unique and new, and I'm working with a investment bank out of Newport Beach or Irvine, California, Ousted Securities, and we're on a capital campaign to raise money to buy this pipeline, turn it around, and refurbish it. So I guess what I could do is I'll bring up the slide deck, and then we can just walk through the slide deck, and I'll tell you a little bit about you know, what this pipeline is and what we're trying to accomplish with it, and that's how I'll start.
So give me a half a second to bring the slide deck up where I hit that. It's screen share, right? And then I find what I want to share. And so I'll start with this. This is pretty simple. This, oh, you know what? Okay, there it is.
So okay, great. That's a Google Earth map, just to introduce this very quickly. That's where the pipeline is. That's where it is in the state of Michigan. It's a 225-mile
pipeline, and this is actually our presentation. So let's, how do I do this? You are sharing. I want this on. I see it on my screen, but I don't see it on our.
Oh, there it is. It just popped up for a second.
Oh, bear with. All right, one more time.
I think you just need to get rid of the other, the map, shut that down, and it's probably underneath it.
That's what it probably was. All right, let's see it. And then, let's try it.
There you go. You want to put it on a slideshow?
Yeah, I'm going to throw it to slideshow in just a second. I have all these things. Oh, there it is. Now, that should be on slideshow, at least on my laptop, it's on slideshow.
And so that should be pretty straightforward. So we are SilverWolf Midstream. I started this company. I'll just give you a little background on myself. I've been in the energy space for about 30 years, and 30 years building and managing and developing assets. The early part of my career was in marketing, in the deregulated energy marketing space, where we started with deregulated natural gas on interstate pipelines and selling it to wholesale customers. That was 30 years ago, and that's evolved into the early entry point. The path of least resistance into the energy space was marketing, and developed that for a number of years. I built a marketing company with 2 utility organizations underneath me because there's an enormous amount of credit that is required to be able to buy the resource, to be able to resell the resource, so that natural gas, that would be. And so you needed big, deep pocket credit parties to be able to manage those transactions. So I built 2 marketing companies and successfully monetized those with utility holding companies. One of the utilities was Utilicorp United out of Kansas City, an affiliate of them, and then another one was Indiana, well, an affiliate of Indiana Gas, Southern Indiana Gas and Electric, and put those marketing companies together. And I started a pipeline company about 15 years ago, gathering oil and gas from local legacy producers in the Appalachian Basin. And that's what got me onto the asset side. And successfully built pipelines, gathering lines, 2 oil wells and gas wells out in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, in that market, and gathering them and then bringing them to facilities and or the utility company for distribution. And that was a successful business, and we monetized that to an affiliate of Dominion Resources a number of years ago. And that is part of the infrastructure that's in the shale play that we all know and love today in the Marcellus and Utica shale. So, and then I was asked to lead a group in business development at a utility company in Detroit. Detroit Edison, or DTE Energy, had a unregulated non-jurisdictional affiliate that managed Midstream assets and was in the early stages of really growing that asset. So I was in business development there, looking for assets and pipelines. And that's the segue to how we found this pipeline. Through those relationships, we basically, I have met many people, and I'm very familiar with the asset in this case that's in the state of Michigan. It's 225-mile, 8-inch coated steel pipeline that runs. Currently, it flows, its direction of flow is from north to south, meaning it starts at that north end where there's a little dog leg, and that's in a town called Kalkaska. And it starts there and flows down to southern Michigan to Sarnia, Ontario, crosses the river there in Marysville, and goes to one of the largest refineries in Ontario, in Sarnia. It's the Shell plant. Shell Oil Company built this pipeline in 1973 for that purposes. They own the plant in the northern half to deliver down to the southern half for ethane, which was a byproduct or a product out of the gas stream that was produced in Michigan when it was a prolific gas play. So long story short, this asset has come and gone through a number of iterations of ownership, and it's always been owned by an oil company that produces on the acreage that is up there in that location of the field. And the current owner has a 280 or 300,000 acre position that they are drilling and producing oil and gas on. And the product stream that was flowing on this pipeline was ethane. And ethane is a derivative product that comes out of the gas stream of a wet natural gas stream. It's one of the carbon chains that really is not good to keep into the natural gas stream that goes to the utility company that we burn in our house. So it was going down to the refinery for the refinery to use it in other capacities. They took that stream all the way down, sent it to Sarnia, and that's how it's been operating for 20 plus years. The market has dissipated to almost nothing for the value of ethane, and the oil company that owns this pipeline currently decided they wanted to monetize this so they can put resources into what they do, and that is exploration and production. So this pipeline is available to us. You know, there are some things that I probably ought to get to. I should have hit those earlier on. There are some risk factors that have to be disclosed. So in this slide deck, and everybody will get a copy of this slide deck, the standard operating risk factors and disclosures are in there, and that's the stuff that we all know and love and that we have to keep in there for our attorneys to be happy. So that's where that is. But so the short and the quick, I just kind of gave you this summary of where we're in words, what this summary is. What we're doing on this asset is we're taking this 225-mile asset, and rather than follow these slides and tell you what the story is, I'm parked on this financial summary because you can look at that while I tell you more about the story. Because the story is, there's a pipeline in the state of Michigan, and it's not being used. So it hit the radar screen because we found an empty asset that was being underutilized. And this may exist everywhere in the United States where there's this type of situation. However, in Michigan, it's a little bit different. In Michigan, it happens to be the single largest market in the United States for propane, residential usage and also other usage. The demand in Michigan is about 489 to 500 million gallons a year of propane. And it's all being trucked right now in Michigan. It's all being trucked from this lower section down here in Sarnia throughout the entire state going this way. There is no pipeline in Michigan that takes that product and moves it along a pipeline for another distribution point farther into the state. Everybody in the state of Michigan has to go and pick it up by truck over here in the Marysville area or another location on the far west side of the state called Alta. So this narrative was, gee, this pipeline's kind of interesting. Maybe we can relieve truck traffic and then go capture the market. I mean, there's 500 million gallons of propane moving around in trucks in the state of Michigan. And it's all coming out of this Marysville, most of it's coming out of this Marysville area. This pipeline goes right there, connects to exactly the plant where the propane is picked up at. And I do have slides that indicate where the pictures of all this is. Our terminus of the pipeline, mile marker 225, goes right into the plant and the storage facilities where propane is stored. So we have a natural source for this, and instead of trucks coming down there and lining up on the highways in southern Michigan, we're going to move this further up the line to 2 points in the middle of the state and have them come to different areas. And we've done our analysis on this to figure out how much we can charge for a tariff, a transportation rate, to be able to make it a good value proposition for trucking companies to say, you know what, instead of driving all the way down to Marysville, I'm going to go over here and pick it up in the middle of the state. And so we have a tariff that we think works in that scenario. We have a flat tariff rate that we're going to charge 10 cents to move propane from Marysville to Kalkaska, and there may be some other additions to that as we continue to file our tariff with FERC. That's another point to this. As I go through this whole slide deck, I'll probably move around from point to point, but every one of the things that I'm talking about are addressed in the slide deck. This is a FERC-regulated pipeline, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That may sound like bad news to some, but it really isn't in this case. It might be bad news if you were trying to build a new pipeline, and you can just go to the news to read any story you want about new pipelines trying to get built today and all of the opposition that's out there against them in the process of doing that.
Do you need to re-engineer the existing pipeline?
No, this pipeline is flowing. It's a liquids pipeline. It's regulated by FERC under the oil pipeline rules, not under natural gas, which is very favorable for us. Without getting into the minutia of why that's the case, this used to be regulated under the Interstate Commerce Act, and when FERC took over the Interstate Commerce Commission regulatory responsibilities, pipelines came into it, and oil pipelines specifically, and they just grandfathered it under. And the continuing process for regulation at this point on this pipeline is that we file we're going to file a market-based rate tariff, and it gets approved, and it really isn't a process of formal approval, although there is an approval process, but it's about a 30-day wait. It's really a filing process than a case-making process. We're not making our case for something because we've already done it under the 3 scenarios of rules that they set. But this pipeline's integrity is probably the single most important thing that we wanted to look at as to whether or not this was a viable project. It was built in 1973, and we're thinking, okay, you know, it's an old piece of pipe. Does it leak? That's the first question. And the answer to that question is never leaked. It has had leaks at pump stations where they've connected to it, and the connection valve has had a leak, but the pipe has never leaked.
So how many trucker hours per year are you saving from?
Oh, this is enormous. So there is a slide, and actually I don't want to go through each slide. Yeah, we have a few more minutes. Yeah. So, and that's part of why I didn't really want to go slide to slide. But at the end of the day, this pipeline and this visual here with this map up, if you can imagine, there are trucks that go all the way down to Marysville, and the answer to the question is we think that we can eliminate 10,000 truckloads per year based on the volumes that we have already initial commitments for.
How many drivers is that? 100?
Well, I guess that's a good question in terms of, I haven't broken it down in terms of the number of employees, the number of drivers, so I don't have the actual answer, but I guess it's a mathematical formula. The 10,000 is a mathematical formula based on how much a truck can haul and how much they're allowed to drive in a given day. And so with the market share that we're able to penetrate in the opening of this pipeline, we think that impacts about 10,000 truckloads per year. And under regulatory rules—
How many hours is 10,000?
I was just going to hit that. It's 1 million miles per year off the highways in Michigan. So we think there's a green alternative to this, or a green perspective of this pipeline. We think that 10,000 diesel trucks loads off the roads in Michigan per year, 1 million miles of truck driving on the highway being eliminated. We think that can't be anything but positive for the state of Michigan. And this narrative has been discussed with the state of Michigan and the regulatory people in the state of Michigan, and they embrace this. Without putting words in their mouth, they embrace this project and are very excited to see something like this come.
50,000 hours, it sounds like 60 miles per hour.
Yeah, and actually there are new regulations on trucking that is also impacted.
In West Texas, lawful pipe, new pipe, but the same way there's risk mitigation from getting my truckers off the road.
Right.
You guys are running 3 axle loading trailers.
Yeah.
Right, we only run 2, so I manage the cost. The biggest thing is from even if I look at the savings on my insurance, it'd be huge.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, there is a slide in this deck, and Marty, we're gonna send this out to everybody, correct? So everyone will.
You're gonna, the video will be available to everyone,
Okay.
and you'll get the information of the attendees, and you can send it out to the ones.
Okay, so if you're interested in the full deck, because we have a limited amount of time today to go through it, and there are a number of slides here, but each slide addresses a number of different questions, and I'll wing through them relatively quick as we go through this and wrap up, because we only have about 5 more minutes, right, Marty?
Yes.
Yep. So pipelines are buried. That was a question a lot of people asked me. Does the pipeline sit up across the ground? Is there any risk of it blowing up or whatever? And we don't use these words, blow up, in this industry. You know, there's risk of anything, I suppose, at any point in time. But the pipeline comes out of the ground. It's buried 48 inches down, but it does come out of the ground at certain points where there are valve checks and metering components and meter stations and pump stations. And so this is one of them that comes out. One of the things we have to do on this project is, here's a real simple summary of what this is. We have a 225-mile pipeline. It's going to cost $270 million if you had to build that pipeline today. We have an agreement to buy this pipeline for a purchase price of $20 million and then refurbish the pipeline, turn it around. Currently, it flows from north to south. We're going to turn it around. All those valves that are along the pipeline, we have to repurpose them. And we're going to turn the flow from south to north. We're going to insert 2 pumping stations and terminal stations along the way so trucks can come along the path and pick up the product off the pipeline. Those terminal stations are going to be capable of delivering up to 1,000 gallons per minute, and a typical truck holds about 8,000 gallons. And so in the logistics world, we think it's at a 15-minute issue for trucks to come in, fill, and leave. And we think that's going to be one of the fastest in the industry. And it's similar to an existing terminal that does the same thing, and that's what we're building our model
What do you
upon.
currently have contracted?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things is the commerciality of this pipeline. And, you know, pipelines really don't get built unless someone's going to put something in it and pay for it. And so this pipeline, we don't want to buy this pipeline unless we can find someone to put something in it and pay for it. We've found, we have initial contract indications of about 68 million gallons at 10 cents be able to move on this pipeline in the first year. The first calendar year won't be a full operating year, but it will be, we will probably be cash flowing by June to October of next year. And then, of course, our first full year after that, we expect to move 68 million gallons under contract in this pipeline. So, how much more time do I have?
You've got about 5 more minutes for
okay.
Q&A, but my question is, what is the response from the trucking companies or?
No, we're not talking to the trucking companies right now, because this is going to be a little bit of a surprise. Right now, they kind of have, you know, they own the show. The trucks got to go all the way down there, and they run all over the state. And actually, there's probably an opportunity for escalating costs in trucking. So the cost proposition for moving propane on a pipeline is relatively static. We do have cost of living, we have inflation adjustments, things like that are built into the rates, which are all part of our rate process. But the overall cost is pretty static. And so,
what's the investment you're looking for again?
So our investment, the one slide I had up was we need to capitalize $47 million. And that is including the acquisition of the pipeline itself, which is $20 million. And then we have another, for simple math purposes, just to keep the math simple, we have another $27 million on top of that for refurbishing the pipeline, turning it around and repurposing it and filling it with propane. This pipeline is currently under pressure without leaking, and we've done integrity studies already. We're engaged in a phase 1 integrity, as we are right now. And it's held under 850 pounds of pressure for all 225 miles with natural gas in it. And we will go through each one of these stations. I've walked the full length of the pipeline with my partners, and we know what we're getting into. We have a good pipeline here. It's solid. It's never leaked in its entire life. And we're going to be doing that as part of our due diligence as well. There's a thing called pigging, which is a pipeline inspection gauge, and we have to go in and we're going to run the whole 225 miles. One of the regulatory requirements the state of Michigan has is that we run that pig every 5 years. And so that's the other reason why the integrity of this pipeline is, A, it's known, and we know what we're getting into in terms of potential risks of maintenance. We know what kinds of maintenance issues have had to be done on it over the last 25 years, and it's been very little. It's typical maintenance of just keeping the right-of-way clean and the pipeline operating.
How much of the 47 million is equity versus debt?
No debt. This is
47 million of equity.
It's 100% equity, and I don't really feel comfortable going with debt. There is an aspect to this that we can layer. This is a great question, Marty, because we can layer in debt after we close and create a reversion back to the investors very quickly. So there is that component to this investment.
And what's the lifespan of the pipeline itself?
Yeah, the pipeline itself, well, as you know, it's physically been around since 1973, or at least that's what I told you, but it will qualify potentially, and I'm not a tax person, but there are going to be some tax benefits that will qualify for that, and there potentially could be some really accelerated tax benefits in 2020 that are available to the early investors, and that is good. But the project lifeline, if you're asking us, is we have a monetization target of, we're looking at 7 years. We're going to pay a very secure, based on cash flow, a 12% preferred return to the investors with all their money back, and then we want to split the gains on the pipeline. If it does in fact go up in value and becomes a more valuable pipeline, we're going to split that 50-50. You know, we're partners, we're getting married. You guys get half, we get half. Me and my management team, we're not making anything on this transaction in the acquisition of it or in the operating of it. Nobody's.
So although it's equity, it's almost structured like a loan with
a preferred return, and then you get the bonus at the end. At the end of this transaction, we think we will monetize this pipeline at around 8 times our earnings. Right now, it's got 0 earnings. And so at the end of this pipeline lifespan in our world, we think in about 5 years, we'll be earning about $14 million a year, and we feel that in this market, in the midstream space, that we can obtain about an 8 times multiple on that, and we think that's an enormous return, while the entire time we've been paying a 12% preferred dividend. So that, and it's secure cash by creditworthy customers that have to, and it's demand driven. That's the other thing. We're not commodity sensitive. We don't really care what the price of propane per se is. But Marty's giving me a little signal to say the next person's coming in, so I'll try and wrap up. Are there any questions that anybody in the I don't have the ability, or at least I can see if there are questions on here in this.
No, I think it's really interesting, but I think there's an ESG aspect that's.
I thought so too. When I was listening to the other guy talking about ESG, I thought there was an opportunity for ESG, but there is a green component to this. And take a look at the slide deck, call me, email me, and I'd be happy to really go into detail with you.
Neil, where are you physically located?
I'm in Dallas, Texas, and the pipeline's in Michigan. I also have a place in Michigan, so I'm from Michigan and know Michigan very well.
Fantastic, great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and let me just give you